welcome to this week's Autism News. I'm going to be kicking things off this week with an interesting study that I read about. This study was originally published in the Journal of the American Medical Association Psychiatry, and I feel like the topic is a little bit controversial. I would love to hear what you think about it. I originally heard about this study from Science Daily, although by then I had seen it from multiple sources. This study, which is originally out of the University of Montreal, says that they are seeing less and less distinctions between people who are diagnosed as being on the autism spectrum and neurotypical people. And they looked at, I believe, 23,000 people from 4 different countries and found that because diagnostic criteria has changed since 1966 and become more refined, that there are less differences between people who are on the spectrum now and neurotypical people. And their projection basically is that if things continue as they are now, there will be no difference between people who are autistic and neurotypical people in 10 years. One quote that I thought was interesting, they said that the definition of autism may get too blurry to be meaningful, trivializing the condition because we are increasingly applying the diagnosis to people whose differences from the general population are less pronounced. And then to verify that this trend was unique to autism, they looked at other groups like people who have schizophrenia, and they found that actually the differences with schizophrenia between the general population has become greater rather than less. And so they said that meant that it was only a trend that they were seeing with autism. They also said that this could be the reason that there haven't been breakthroughs with autism in the last 10 years. This could be because people who are being used in studies aren't different enough from the general population to actually, they didn't say count, but it kind of, when reading it kind of seemed like they meant count towards the studies, that people who have more of these qualities that rate higher on the scale of these 7 things that they are looking at are the ones that should be used in the studies so that progress can be made and answers can be found. I'm not saying I agree with anything I've just explained, I'm just explaining it. My own takeaway when I was reading this was that I do think that they have definitely refined diagnosis over the years, and that people who went through their childhoods wondering if there was something wrong with them, knowing that they were different but not understanding it, are being diagnosed now. And I think that that's a really good thing. I think that it's good to have answers and to be able to find other people. I think that a lot of times labels can help us find people who have things in common with ourselves, who share similar life experiences, like that feeling of difference in childhood, of knowing that you're different from other people and that your brain just is wired differently. Being able to have a reason behind that and knowing that there's not something wrong with you, I think that that can be really huge. And I think it's really hard to quantify because how a person experiences autism isn't necessarily how everyone else experiences it. Some people mask very well, but you can't really measure masking and how maybe someone is better at it, but that doesn't make them less autistic. I think that it's really, really difficult to make these judgment calls and say that they are wrongly diagnosing people who are, I guess they would say, higher functioning. It's difficult to talk about this study without functioning labels. I don't think that we're getting to the point where these lines are so blurry. And honestly, I don't think that it's so easy to get a diagnosis these days. I know people who have struggled to have their children diagnosed. It's not that easy. I know that a lot of people think that it is, but it's really not. For anyone, especially for women, especially for girls, it's just not. In a way, we are lucky that our girls present in what's seen as a more almost boyish classical way, because it was a lot easier for us, I think, than it is for most other families that have girls who are on the autism spectrum. For me, this seems like a very odd study. Out of all the things you could be looking at and studying for autism, looking at these diagnostic criteria seems like an odd one for me. I just really do not believe it's one of the problems that we're facing right now. This next bit of news has come out about some researchers at Northeastern University who studied 20 children who were wearing some devices that they are developing. The devices are biosensors They look at heart rate, they look at skin temperature, sweating, and arm movements. And these devices are able to predict with 87% accuracy outbursts of aggression, which can be really helpful for some families in predicting when their loved one is going to be about to have a hard time. It gives 60 seconds warning, and it's hoped that that 60 seconds warning might allow families to help diffuse a situation, help the person who is having a hard time relax in time, that maybe that outburst or meltdown can be avoided, or at least be able to get everyone to a safe place and into a safe situation so that no one gets hurt. Now that they have tested this out on 20 children, the team is hoping to test out their biosensors on 240 people on the spectrum. And it seems like there are a lot of studies that we're talking about this week. This next one comes out of Dartmouth, and it's talking about how brain signals are measured during simple visual tasks could be a marker for autism. This study basically talks about something that is called binocular rivalry, and it's what happens when you look at two images at the same time, one with your right eye and one with your left eye. When this happens and your brain sees two different images with two different eyes, your brain blocks out one image and basically you only see one of the two images. But what the study found was that autistic people switched between the images more slowly than neurotypical people. The lead investigator said that this was concrete evidence that there's a fundamental difference in the visual processing in autism. The people that scored the highest on the ADOS, their brains switched the most slowly between the two images compared to people who scored lower on the ADOS. The association between the brain activity and the test scores made them optimistic that this could be used as a diagnostic tool in the future. However, the association is relatively weak. I am kind of interested to see how this plays out, how across the board this actually is for people who are on the spectrum. Our girls both tend to have good visual processing skills. Like, they both tend to do tasks that involve visual processing really quickly compared to other tasks when they are tested. But they also both score like 10 out of 10 on the ADOS. So I would be really curious to see how they would do with this sort of a test, because technically, according to this, they should switch really slowly with the visual processing test. So I would just be really curious to see how across the board this is, especially before it's used as a diagnostic tool. Delta and their connecting partner SkyWest are in the news right now for a bit of trouble that they seem to be in for a family who is attempting to travel home with them. There was an autistic man who was traveling with his family, his mother, his father, his brother, and his sister. Upon boarding the flight, it was discovered that he was actually not seated with his family. He is nonverbal. His family explained that he absolutely needed to sit with someone in his family, and the airline workers insisted that he needed to be in his ticketed seat. The woman who was sitting next to him actually volunteered to switch seats with a family member and was really cooperative, and the airline workers said that that would not be possible, which just doesn't make sense to me. And because I know it could come up, once when our family was traveling, when our girls were little, we actually got to the airport hours and hours early to ensure that we got seats together and specifically requested it. And the airline actually booked the first leg of the flight with us all together. And then when they put the second leg of the flight, they did not put us together. And it was a disaster. But luckily, the people around us allowed us to actually sit together. And that was with Continental, and it was pretty nightmarish. So I know exactly what it's like to do something where you get there hours early and request sitting with someone with a disability, and then have the airline not put you together for your connecting flight, even though you've really stressed what a big deal it is for it to happen. Delta says that they are currently reviewing the details of what happened. My last story of the day is a story that comes out of the UK, and it is about some airports and grocery stores who are handing out lanyards. These are green lanyards that have sunflowers on them, and they are available for customers who have disabilities. Visit Sainsbury's and Tesco, and then also certain airports. They're for invisible disabilities such as autism, dementia, visual or hearing impairments. It says that staff are told to be aware that these customers might need more time to shop, as well as help packing bags and taking them to their car. They might also require staff to speak face-to-face to allow lip reading using clear and easy to understand language. The lanyards might also be worn by people who need help reaching products, reading labels, and assistance finding suitable scooters and trolleys. I think this is really neat because you don't have to wear one. I mean, you don't have to order one and wear one, but it's something that you can get if you or your child just needs a little bit of extra help in the store, and it allows people to signal that they might need a little bit extra help in a store without actually having to go up and verbally ask, which could be stressful and hard to do for people who need help. I really actually like the idea of this. One woman said she wouldn't have usually gone to the gas station by herself. I guess it's petrol station, but in the UK, but she did because she knew that with a lanyard on, if she couldn't do it herself, someone would come over and help her. So I think that's really cool. And it sounds like people upstairs need lunch. Our time is up. That is it for today. If you like this video, we would love it if you'd give it a thumbs up. And if you're interested in all things autism, we'd love it if you hit subscribe. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.